What happens when a celebrated war hero is also a murderer of children? This is the story of Gilles de Rais, a man who fought alongside Joan of Arc as she helped crown a king, only to spend the next 10 years kidnapping, torturing, and killing children in the dungeons of his castle. In less than 2 decades, he went from being a national hero to one of history's most infamous serial killers. This isn't just some dark fairy tale. This really happened. Medieval France's golden boy became its worst nightmare, and even today, experts argue, was he truly evil, or was he framed in a twisted plot? By the time you finish hearing this story, you'll understand how power, loneliness, and uncontrollable desires can turn someone who seemed like a saint into something truly monstrous. And believe me, the real story is far more horror than anything you've seen in movies. From noble beginnings to war hero, Gilles de Rais was born in 1405 into incredible wealth. His family owned huge amounts of land in Brittany and Anjou, making him one of the richest nobles in France before he was even an adult. When his parents died, he inherited a fortune so vast it would rival today's billionaires. But money wasn't enough for him. He wanted fame and honor. At just 16 years old, Gilles threw himself into the 100 Years' War, fighting with the fearless energy of someone who had never seen the horrors of battle. Surprisingly, he was a natural. His skill in warfare earned him respect, especially as he helped defeat the English. Then, in 1429, everything changed. A young peasant girl named Joan of Arc appeared, claiming God had sent her to help crown the Dauphin as king. Most nobles mocked her, but not Gilles. He saw something special in her and decided to support her mission with his money and military strength. What happened next became legend. Gilles fought alongside Joan in some of the war's most important battles. He was with her at the Siege of Orleans, marched with her to Reims, and when Charles VI was finally crowned king, Gilles stood right beside the throne, a celebrated hero of France. By age 24, he had everything medieval society admired: wealth, courage, loyalty, and what seemed like divine favor. The church even gave him the title of Marshal of France, the highest military honor. Gilles de Rais was living the perfect life. But in the Middle Ages, even the brightest dreams could turn into the darkest nightmares. The downfall begins in 1430. Joan of Arc was captured by the English. A year later, she was burned at the stake. Her death broke something inside Gilles. The man who once fought with religious passion withdrew from the world, hiding away in his castles like a wounded beast. Then, he started spending money like there was no tomorrow. He paid for enormous, expensive plays, costing more than some entire kingdoms made in a year, with extravagant costumes and sets that would put modern theatre to shame. He hosted feasts that lasted for days, serving rare and exotic foods to guests who probably thought he'd gone mad. But the biggest warning sign, his sudden fascination with dark magic and alchemy. Gilles collected books on the occult, hiring so-called sorcerers who claimed they could turn ordinary metals into gold. He wasn't doing this because he needed money. He was still incredibly rich, but because he was searching for something to fill the emptiness Joan's death had left behind. Servants whispered about strange ceremonies in the castle's hidden rooms. Villagers reported seeing eerie lights and hearing disturbing noises at night. The man who once fought for God now seemed to be making pacts with the devil. And then, children began vanishing. The monster is revealed. At first, it was just a few children from nearby villages. Poor families sent their sons to work at the castle, hoping for a better future, but these boys never returned. When parents asked questions, Gilles' servants gave weak excuses. The boys were sent away given new opportunities. Local officials, afraid of Gilles' power, ignored the rumors. Who would dare accuse a war hero over missing peasant children? But the disappearances weren't random. There was a pattern. The victims were young boys, usually between 8 and 12 years old, often with fair hair and delicate features. Children who reminded Gilles of someone or something. France's hero had become a monster. The horrors inside the castle, what happened inside Gilles' castles, was beyond terrifying. He tricked children with promises of jobs or education. Once they were inside, he subjected them to unimaginable cruelty. Gilles didn't just kill them, he made their suffering last. Witnesses later described fake religious ceremonies, followed by torture. Some victims were dressed in fine clothes and treated kindly at first, before Gilles revealed his true intentions, enjoying their fear. His methods changed, sometimes beheading, sometimes cutting their throats, sometimes dismembering them. He even kept a special dagger, a brocmard, just for these killings. In his own confession, Gilles admitted to disturbing acts with the dead, kissing corpses, admiring severed heads, even cutting open bodies while some victims were still alive. His servants later said he sometimes kept bodies for days, continuing his gruesome rituals before burning the remains in the castle's furnaces. Experts estimate he killed between 80 and 200 children. His reign of terror lasted almost 10 years. The most chilling part, Gilles claimed these murders were part of dark magic rituals. He believed innocent blood had power, that it could restore his wealth, or even bring Joan of Arc back to life. The end of the nightmare by 1440, Gilles made a fatal mistake. He ran out of money. His wild spending had drained his fortune. Desperate, he sold family lands and borrowed huge sums, even from the church. When people demanded repayment, he turned violent, even kidnapping a priest who tried to collect a debt. That was the final straw. The church and nobles, who had ignored the rumors for years, finally had a reason to act. Gilles was arrested and put on trial for heresy, sodomy, and murder. The trial was he really guilty? The trial was a huge spectacle. Over 100 witnesses testified, servants, parents, even a few survivors. But here's the twist. Some historians believe Gilles was framed. He was rich, well connected, and knew secrets about France's powerful elite. The people he owed money to, bishops and nobles, benefited from his downfall. His arrest came just as his debts became impossible to ignore. His confession. It was given under the threat of torture and excommunication. Yet, the evidence was overwhelming. Too many witnesses, too many details. Either Gilles was truly guilty, or he was the victim of one of history's biggest conspiracies. The court found him guilty. On October 26, 1440, Gilles de Rais was hanged and burned in Nantes. His last words, a plea for forgiveness, and a warning about the dangers of greed and excess. Legacy from hero to monster. After his death, France tried to erase him. His name was removed from records. The church pretended he never existed, but evil this extreme couldn't be forgotten. By the 1600s, his crimes inspired fairy tales, most famously Bluebeard, the nobleman who murdered his wives. Today, criminologists see Gilles as one of the first documented serial killers. His methods, choosing victims carefully, using ritualistic violence, matched those of killers studied centuries later. The scariest part? Gilles wasn't some obvious villain. He was a celebrated hero until the truth came out. His story makes us ask, how thin is the line between a hero and a monster? Because the most dangerous predators don't hide in the dark. They stand in the light, wearing medals, surrounded by applause. A society that fears the powerful enables the wicked. For years, nobles ignored missing peasant children because Gilles was a war hero. Complicity is as deadly as the crime itself. Like if you were hooked by this tale. Comment your thoughts. Was Gilles guilty or framed? Subscribe for stories where truth is stranger than horror